Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, and this is a show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. I've had an interesting week. I know I was supposed to record something last week after the 3 hours of live streaming and talking to people, but unfortunately, life kept me busy, and I've been working on Rocktober, and it's been rough. You try to make something different, try to make something creative, and certain pieces just don't fall into place. And sometimes your teammates need to just talk to you and be like, "Yo, dog, let that thing go." So, I've had to let some things go and rebuild and just realign some of my core principles of what I'm doing for October. So it's a lot going down right now. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about two things. Number one, we're going to talk about WizKids Opens. Then we're going to talk about Unimind. And I'm breaking it down like this mainly because I feel like these two elements are probably, I would say, the most impactful elements right now for our community. So let's start looking at WizKids Open. And WizKids Opens for the fall this year, I think, personally is bad. I think the whole affair is bad for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, the prize support isn't as good, and I know we're all like, "Yay! Did you see that? Did you look at all these things?" And we're probably going to come back and be like, "Oh, but all that stuff was in the X-Men set." So I traveled to possibly get one chase that I would get in my brick, and everything else that I possibly could have gotten. The other thing is, from what I can tell, is that only first place, and it says right here, it says National Championship Qualifications. The winner of the event earns a 2017-2018 National Championship, HeroclX National Championship Qualification. That is BS-aroo, to quote my slang Japanese. It's horrible, and here's the reason why. Okay, my last two qualifications that I got, I made top 4, and I think I got second place. Okay, so when I look at those situations, and it's like, well, hey man, you didn't win, you wouldn't have played nationals. And my only comeback is, okay, so now I got to play the grinders. Yeah, that sucks. The grinders as they are now are, how can I put it? They're good enough, but it's easy to just throw away tons of money at it. I'd rather just have a straight up qualification bid. I think they personally have established that they do not want a national tournament as large of a national tournament as they had in previous years. That's what I think. This year, not previous years, this year. And so in turn, we could start to figure out like, they're trying to whittle down national so that there is enough time for them to run the event efficiently without having to cut time. So that they can do maybe 4 rounds cut to top 16, cut to top 8 maybe, and bounce those out and have grinders on their first day. I think that's legitimately what they're probably going to do. If they don't get a lot of pushback from the community going forward, they're definitely going to stick with this format. Now, what does this mean? It means that a whole lot of politicking is about to go down. And I'm not lying on that one. So pretty much it goes down like this. If you're in the who's who list of heroclix players, you're probably going to be asked by another person in the who's who's list of heroclix players, where are you going to play your WizKids Open? And then folks are going to be like, I'm going to hit up this one, and this one. Okay. Then what's going to be is going to go down like, hey, if you hit up this one, I'm going to hit up this other one. And then now we don't have to, deal with each other. Or pretty much folks are going to do like what I'm going to do and say, like, I can go to location A and deal with 8 high-level players, or I can go to location B and deal with 1 to 2 high-level players. And you're going to start weighing your options and being like, push comes to shove, I'll deal with, the 1 or 2 high-level players because I still have a hope of potentially, like, A, one of them already getting a qualification, or B, them knocking each other out, and I only have to face one of them in out rounds. That's it. That's pretty much it. So it becomes a bit of a problem because I feel in particular the last rounds of WKO's people were a little bit more friendly. They were able to present ideas to one another without much risk. And then the other end of the politics is you don't look like a douchebag if you're going to multiples. And I know someone would say like, hey, Dark Logos, what would be wrong with going to multiple, WizKids Opens? Well, if you win your first one, nothing much, after that, because the buy would be passed down unless, they want to play some other like little game or whatever. And I'm just reading, it says the winner of the event earns a 2017-2018 heroclix National Championship qualification. If the winner of the event already earned a 2017-18 heroclix National Championship qualification in the country in which the event is being held, the qualification passes down to the highest ranked player who does not already have a qualification from an event held in the same country. So there you go. So they make it clear that if you already got one, it passes down. Some people might get mad about the prize support thing, but if you're mad about the prize support, homie, to quote the trolls, get good. But I can see some people being bitter about like if Mr. So-and-so hadn't showed up at the event, I would have gotten first and I would have been able to get that Age of Apocalypse Shadow Cat, blah, 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 whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, so there is going to be a bit of that. So some folks are going to pretty much say like, hey, are you going to this one so I can avoid you? Or are you going to this other one? And there's other things that could be done to cause problems for the system. So personally, I think them allowing, one person for every 4 people at the event was a good metric. And even when you look at the case of Chicago, where one of the WizKids Opens they had was sealed and, there was over 100 players. Yeah, how many of those people showed up to actually participate in Origins at Nationals? Maybe 4, 5, from the Chicagoland area. We're at Nationals, aka Worlds. And so I don't see that previous system as being a problem. Again, what I think it comes down to is a time restraint, and WizKids is cheap. And they want to have all their big titles for the U.S. at one location because they don't have to spend more money on it. Because finding a venue to host 100 people potentially, which in all honesty would be a lot less it would be a lot less if it wasn't at Origins. The tournament would be like 50 people. Some dedicated players would show up, but also at the other end is that a majority of people are saying like, okay, Nationals leads into the World Championship. Is it really worth it for me to go to this event where I can just go to the, World Championships, play grinders, set aside like $100 for grinders, and as long as I score the quote unquote 8 points, needed to get into Worlds, I'm in. So does nationals really matter for the U.S. like that? And so, I mean, these are some things that they really need to like get their stuff together on. And they need to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. So let's look at some other elements that are going along with this. I need to temporarily allow all scripts on my page. I run no script. I'm not getting paid by them, but if you're running Firefox, it is probably one of the main reasons why I pick Firefox over Chrome, because
just the same way you would with
no script. And there goes like everything on my computer. So yeah, let's just mute that. All right, there we go. I got 80 different things that just popped off. Okay, so if we go and we make some like really close analysis here, we see a couple of things. Number one is if you live in certain areas, you're getting like 80 WizKids opens, and if you live in other areas, you're just out of luck, homie. And this, I'm mainly speaking from the U.S. Also, if you are in Mexico, I feel for you. I really, really feel for you. Because you got one in Mexico City and you have one other. And that's it. If you live in Canada, oh gosh, WizKids hate you. Unless what I've been told is wrong, that there's only one in Canada that's actually doing heroclix for WizKids Opens. The rest are Dice Masters. Are Dice Masters only. So yeah, that sucks to be Canadian right now, if that is true. So that's something else to sort of unpack a little later. So anyway, let's get into it. So if you look around like Chicagoland or you know, Chicago area, there are 4, like within reasonable distance. There are 4 right there. And then if you consider like an hour or 2 hours not, being that far away, you have, I think it's like south, you have Indiana. I want to make sure that that's right. Yeah, you have some in Indiana and some in Michigan. I know Mr. Scott Cramp is going to be happy that Michigan got, a decent amount in their coverage. Not compact like Chicago, but definitely right there in Michigan. He can probably like hit all of them if they're on, not the same day. If we go over to the East Coast has the highest concentration of WizKids Opens, which is understandable in part because let's be honest, WizKids is hella biased, and they're also really lazy. And I say it like this: they go in what's easiest for them to ship from. So if they need to like do any distribution stuff or do any secret Illuminati handshakes, for the toy company biz, they can do all that on the East Coast. Let's not front. Okay, and if you look, the further west you go, like it starts thinning out. Cali, you're not completely screwed. As I said, not completely screwed. You got enough. I mean, you got Comic Hero University in Fullerton, and then you got Game Empire and Mesa. In San Diego. You got Great Escape Games. And let's see if the little thing would close. And let's see. Who else is this? Games Galore. And who is this? Collectors Inc. in Chico. So I think that's right up there where Aaron Cantu's at. So anyway. For some reason, Utah has 4. So I guess you can thank Jake Williams for that. The secret Illuminati handshakes. They're everywhere, and somewhere around Seattle is up there. Maybe Microsoft bought off of WizKids Open. I don't know. But again, when you start looking at some of the concentrations of heroclix, or where we see the most like rock tournaments in particular, it's mainly in the Midwest. And you can sort of say, I would draw that line being Indiana down to Alabama, all the way over. I'll make a stark argument of follow Texas up through Kansas up to Nebraska, North and South Dakota. West of that, you're not getting as much. You're really not getting as much. So anyway, sort of going back to my rambling about these WizKids Opens here. From a concentrated base of all the ones that we're going to have, let's see, and just sort of eyeballing how many that we're going to have in the U.S. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Let's just assume that we have around 50. Let's just assume it's going to be over 50, but let's just assume that it's around 50. Considering that U.S. Nationals this year, I keep saying last year. This year was about 115 people. They're almost looking to cut that population in half, because you're going to go into Spring WizKids Opens. They're probably going to operate the same as these WizKids Opens, and you might be able to add an additional maybe 30 people to that, and out of that, maybe 20% of those people are going to show up. So like I said, I think they're trying to cut U.S. Nats down because of time. And again, it's mainly because U.S. Nationals doesn't matter outside of you scoring your points to get into the World Championship. Like, it literally doesn't matter. And they've made it not matter because of time. And so they're trying to, like, hey, maybe we can get some more con money if we do this allocation thing of the bids. And I'm really just not a fan of it. I think it's just poor planning. I think it's poor event planning. And I think just primarily, if you were just up front and said, look, let everybody know, for Nationals, due to time, the rounds are between 30 to 35 minutes. Build a team for that. Just don't front and say that you're going to give them a standard allotment of time due to the amount of qualifications. And you've solved your problem. Then I, as a team builder, am going to look at that situation and say, you know what? Playing a stall team might actually hurt me. I might need to be more aggressive, for the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game. Instead of like slowly moving up, I might need to value deployment. There are tons of different elements and tactics and thoughts that you can pour into that. Not this, well, we're going to be short on time, so then we're going to cull the field. I think that's sort of lame. Because again, they make more money, insane more money off of grinders than they do actually hosting nationals. Because you have to look at it like this. You have, 8 people in a pod. Okay? You have 8 people in a pod. You have 3 rounds. Okay, so there's 3 hours that you're let's not even 3 hours. Let's just say about 2. A little over 2. Okay. So there you go. All right. So you got your 3 rounds. And out of those 3 rounds, you're going to, lose half of those people immediately after the first round. So those people are going to go sign up to do another battle royale. So half of your field, how many there are going to go do another grinder immediately. Okay. All right. Then you still have round 2 going on. Okay, so round 2 is going on. Then half of those people, so a quarter of the previous people, are going to get bottled and scooped out of that. And then they're going to go and sign up for another grinder. Okay. And then the people in finals are going to be like, okay, let's play. And once those people play, second place is going to get 4 points and first place gets into Worlds. Whoop-de-dee-can-do. So now you have that second place person trying to get into a whole new fresh batch of grinders if they don't have a nationals bid. And if they do have a nationals bid, all they have to do is literally show up to nationals. They'll get their second 4 points. They're in Worlds. They have a reason to quote unquote try, but they don't have to try. You see what I'm saying? And yes, the prizing for nationals is good. It's really good. And again, like I said, if you're one of those guys that has a paradise and a dream of being the greatest that ever was at heroclix, then yeah, you're going to be, battling out for that, national championship. But for the rest of us, we realize, unfortunately, WizKids made the title absolutely matter for nothing. You are the best heroclix player in the U.S. for less than 24 hours. Enjoy that. So anyway, you can sort of tell I'm frustrated. I think what they had previously was probably the best system that you had. I think they ran into a logistics problem. And sometimes fixing a logistics problem is a simple solution. And, I hate to say it. I just think they're like, well, we have a game that's designed to be played between 40 and 45 minutes or 40 minutes to 50 minutes. And we sort of have to uphold to that unless we're in a time crunch, and then we'll cut the games down. But as long as the people don't know we're doing it, it's okay. And it's like, no, we know what you're doing. Just be upfront about it and do what you've been doing and just tell us rounds are going to be between 30 and 40 minutes. Oh my gosh! If you just are honest with us and you have a 4 to 5 round event, then we should be fine. We should be fine. Okay? But no, it's all this like, we can't let them know how the machine works and then they'll game the system. No, we're already paying attention. We already know how to game the system. This is none of us, there's very few players that goes to these events where it's your first rodeo. Okay? It's very few. Okay, so anyway, I've ranted on this. I think overall, this round of WizKids Open is bad. I'm hoping the ones in the spring are a little bit more open. I understand from a venue perspective, this is great because the kits are cheap, and I like that. The problem, the other problem that I think is going to come in is that I'm calling out some folks. I already know. Like, I was looking at probably going to one in Orlando, and they're like, well, we're probably going to cap this event at 16. And it's like, we have 15 locals. And that sort of thing, I feel, is inevitable. I feel that since the kit says it can serve 16, that people are going to cap events at 16. So what I would tell you is, if you're interested in going to an event, pre-register. Also, if you think a venue might be hella biased towards locals, document the fire out of it. Just document everything. Document who you talk to, get voice recordings, whole nine. And let me know, because I'll make a video about it. I'll straight make a video about it and just blast it on Twitter. And because this is sort of unacceptable. WizKids needs to stop saying, like, the kit serves blank. No, it's like, you get this, and then to say, these people get this, these other people get this, and you have participation prizes up to this, and you can't lock the event other than for venue limitations, i.e., the fire marshal says you can't have more people than this. That's all you have to do, because otherwise you get some BS stuff that happened to my teammate earlier this year. So I'm not that trusting of venues in general. I'm not like, they're freaking Jiminy Cricket and stuff. They're not. There are some crappy venues which WizKids has picked repeatedly. Okay? But they keep picking it because they have the freaking secret Illuminati handshake with WizKids. So anyway, like, if you're going to a WizKids Open this time, just make sure you have your ducks in a row. Pre-register if you have to. If they overcharge you, have some grace. But like, document everything and be prepared. I believe over half of these events are going to be sealed. I really believe that. And I don't even think they're going to be like sealed Thor or sealed Harley Quinn. I think you're going to be playing Deadpool. Not even Avengers Defenders War. You're going to be playing Deadpool. So be on the lookout. Okay, so let's go and talk about Unimind. Now, some of you might be saying, like, why are we going to talk about Unimind? What did Unimind do? And Dark Logos, you went and you said Unimind wasn't that good, and you can't see how he's going to be used. And I said something along the lines of, I don't think he's going to be used in the meta, and I think if he is used, he's going to be some sort of call-in piece and some type of super support. Well, I came and hit that one on the head. I was wrong on the other part. I didn't think that he was meta worthy, but people thought he was. So let's just go over Unimind real quick and explain some things. First off, he has improved targeting, ignores hindering terrain. And this character can make ranged attacks while adjacent to opposing characters. So he can pretty much just shoot out of adjacency. There's no reason to tie him up. Like, he's just going to shoot out anyway. So you have to be aware of that from jump. He has the Forged in Blue Flame, which pretty much allows him to perplex additional times, plus add an Eternal for 5 points onto his build, so he can tap into their power. And if you have more than X, you get more perplexes. So a standard in 300-point games, you're going to deal with the Unimind with 2 perplexes, both with a +2 or -2 potential. Now, I know some people will say, well, no, he's just granted perplex. I was like, no. If you look at his other trait, you can see it clearly says is when he uses perplex, he may modify combat values by +2 or -2. It doesn't say, like, in particular, he's only limited to doing that once. So it's whenever he does perplex, and this character is designed to use his perplex. So there's that. We're looking at a 10 range to targets, starting off with standard mind control, psychic blast, invincible, and 4 damage. And the other thing that's important is that, and this is the important thing, he has protected pulse wave for his first trait. Okay, he does not have protected pulse wave for his second trait, and he does not have, and he'll have protected pulse wave for his stop click. Everything else is open to be pulse waved. Okay, so I may have misunderstood early on about protected pulse wave. I apologize for anybody that I misled in that understanding. Okay, so I know some people will look at this and be like, man, Dark Logos, dude, he's still shallow. Why are we really looking at this? Well, if we look in between the last 2 major Super Qs, Rock Super Qs, Unimind had a big splash. Jakeem still won the events, but primarily Unimind was a major disruptor. And Jakeem's barely got out of the tournament unscathed. And when I say that, I really do mean that. Most of the reports that I'm getting or was reading about or hearing about was Unimind summoned an ID card character and that character missed when they need to, or Unimind made an attack and Jakeem hit him in shape change or something, and they weren't able to kill Jakeem. So that in particular has made this whole affair a lot more interesting. And the main reason it's made a lot more interesting from my perspective is Unimind tackles the sideboard in a very distinct way. And you almost, to compensate for your massive amounts of flexibility, you have to be freaking psychic with your ID cards. And I'm not kidding. You need to be psychic with your ID cards. Because whether you're running, card spam or trying to run card spam, and you really can't. You could try to say like, oh look, Supreme Intelligence, and then Round Table. You're always better off just running a Round Table. Supreme Intelligence is not the best thing for you to run on Unimind. You really can, and I'm not saying it's impossible. But when you start looking at your reality for points and other things that you need functionally in a Unimind team, you're not that flexible. Definitely when you're looking at the realistic cost for Unimind, 99.9% of the time is going to be 165 points. When you realize that, that's when some of the hard, feelings kick in. Because you want to have 3 replacements pop out when he gets destroyed at 150 because he's not going to be KO'd. We need to get a ruling on if I kill one replacement character, but I don't kill all the replacement characters, how many points do I score? Because the replacement rules say if you replace a character with another character and you KO the replacement character, you get the highest points for the cost of the replacement character. So if you replace down to a lower point character, the original higher point is what you would score. If you upgrade to a higher point character and you kill the higher point replacement, you would still get the higher point replacement. So that puts us in a rough spot because it's not clear. If I kill one, do I get 165 points? If I kill two, do I double that? Or if I kill all 3, do I triple my points? Or because I killed all 3 at once, I only get 165 points? Like, it's really not clear, and WizKids needs to make a ruling on that because of how replacement scoring works. So let's sort of go a little bit deeper. Now, because you have those 3 slots filled up on your sideboard, you have a couple of distinct problems. Distinct problem number 1. Your 6 ID cards that you're picking because you're running a Round Table, you need to know what situations that you're going to try to lock down. More commonly, you're going to see Shield level 7 with Hawkeye, Green Arrow with the Chase Green Arrow. You're going to see a Superman ID card with Brick Soups, more than likely, in the wake of the change to how improved targeting destroys blocking works. So Cosmic Spider-Man is not necessarily fully out of the meta, but Cosmic Spider-Man is not the go-to in this situation. If I was able to play 7 ID cards or 8 ID cards, hell, even 9 ID cards because of the sideboard, then I could come back and say, like, look, this is what I would be doing. I would have a reason to run Cosmic Spider-Man. And now some of you might say, like, man, how are you running, 9 characters on a sideboard or what? I mean, or getting enough ID cards for 9 characters. And it's easy. There's enough 10-point characters in all of this. I mean, between multiple sets that you can just flood your sidelines full of them. Flood your main force full of them. So you can run a Court of Owls or a Court of Owls Initiate, a Hand Ninja, Foggy Nelson. I think there's a few others that you could just be like, bloop, I play this now. I think a Miss Marvel Colossal Retaliator, Carnage Colossal Retaliator. All these things sort of come in play. Anyway, so going back and just sort of looking at it, you're giving up three of your spots. And sorry, I need to finish your ID cards. So you have that Superman for the brick soups. And then some of these, what's left is, personal preference. You could start looking at flurry characters. So you're looking at Wonder Woman. You're looking at Nightwing. Or you could do the Adam Klaus Retaliator. There's several cards that just stand out in that perspective. You also, considering, with all of the, barrier shenanigans that are still possible, you'd be like, hey, here's Aquaman, here's U.S. Agent. Those as well are really good and really viable in today's meta. So when we look at it, like, your options from ID cards with Unimind are distinct. In particular, with all the cheap figures going out there, Unimind with the Hawkeye, with Chase Hawkeye it's sort of stupid, because without damage depletion modifier, you're looking at a character that's shooting with precision strike for 4 damage per shot. Maybe even 5, depending on how you set it up. 13 attack, 5 damage, 4 damage to 5 damage. And it's pow, 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 pow. You're not talking about just taking out, random Paul characters, because you can. You can actually start taking out standard figures. So you have this one call in for 5 points that functionally can do, 20 clicks of damage real easily. Just firing on multiple targets. And I think that that's a little absurd. But again, in all fairness, that character was not created in the concept of getting rid of damage depletion modifiers. It wasn't. And anyone saying that it was is high. Okay, that the concept of getting rid of damage depletion modifiers was something that they decided to get rid of due to complications, and that people didn't understand it. So there you go. All right, so when we keep going on, your 6 ID cards is really tight, which means that this really yields itself more towards the people that were good at playing Quinjet. Like, if you were good at playing Quinjet, then you're going to be good at playing Unimind. Okay? Just like if you were good at playing Super Scroll, you're going to be good at playing Jakeem. So when we start looking at, the future fight, it's just pretty much Super Scroll versus Jet, and we saw what won against that. Now we're coming back and it's like, okay, we're seeing this again. We're seeing the new Super Scroll Jakeem versus the new Jet, which is, Unimind. Now some people will come back and say, but you can't real boy with Unimind. Yeah, you sort of can. And this is the part where it gets a little frustrating and also gets a little fuzzy. You can real boy, and I'll say that I got that one from Critical Clicks. You can real boy or perma at least one ID card off of your round table if you roll about average, and you don't replace a character with a character from the round table. Now, you could potentially real boy someone in if you roll about average. You play Unimind with Carnage, and Carnage starts with some Pogs. I'm not going to say how many, because that, your results may vary. But Carnage with some Pogs could create a situation where when your opponent does that Hawkeye call in, it actually hurts them, because now you're turning not 1 per click but 2 per click, and on top of everything else that's ridiculous, you're not going to be able to kill Unimind. You just won't. You'll be able to hurt Unimind. You might even be able to set up Unimind to get to a stop click, but you won't be able to kill Unimind with the Hawkeye call in. Okay, so you're looking at like losing like all your stuff. So all that little stuff is gone. Poof. You're stuck with a really damaged character and Unimind. So you should be turned up the dial enough after all of that. And if you're not, he gets attacked again, or you summon in another ID card. Pretty much once you summon in that other ID card, you should have like 1 or 2 left, and you should be like on the edge of 3. The pop Unimind that's going to split off into the other guys, and it should be able to pop you over to 3. Because the damage was dealt. I just want to make that clear, because you turn off a damage dealt, and the damage was dealt to trigger the freaking, unfolding of Voltron or the Power Ranger Megazord, as you wish. But anyway, let's start looking at some other elements with Unimind, in particular the options that you have to play with them for your 3 characters. Now, I want to sort of like primarily, I'll hit you with something that's, some of my players hit me with. And they were like, remember, Edward, these, Unimind can use powers that they can use. Standard powers that they can use. And the way everything is worded now, if there's a standard power inside of a special power, they can use the standard version of that power. Unimind can use the standard version of the power. So when we start looking at these characters, there's some characters that stand out, and there's some characters that are just like, ugh, you don't do any good. Now, my personal feeling, and this is just my personal, excuse me, is that I personally feel Cersei is a little bit overrated. I understand why people play Cersei. I understand why people like Cersei. I understand how she fits in a standard Unimind play. I get it. I just don't like her. Now, that's my preference. That's my preference. But I'm going to break down to you why each of them have value. So you're going to get them on their starting click for picking powers off Unimind, and then when they go poof, you're going to get them on their last click, and they can't be healed off of their last click. So when you start looking at the characters off of their last click, not so much their first click, you can understand why Cersei's there. Phasing, also you have toughness, like, okay, whatever. You can't use the regen, whatever. You have outwit, and I think you also have traded barrier. Yeah, you have traded barrier. And they all can use the power cosmic perplex thing, which becomes stupid, because now instead of having to deal with 2 of these perplexes, you have to deal with 3. And at this stage, if you hit level 3 on your round table, or sorry, your teleporter, yeah, you're summoning in guys and perplexing someone to be a death blow to your opponent as a real boy. And you can perplex up their attack, their defense, and their damage by 2, and then be like, yeah. Oh, sorry, my bad. Not by 2. My bad. Just by 1. Because it just says, when you look at the other characters, my bad, I misthought about the Unimind thing, and I cross-applied it to the other characters. It says, free until your next turn. This character can use power. This character can't use power cosmic team ability, but can use perplex and willpower, so they can use it standard. When she uses perplex, or when they use perplex and target themselves, modify the combat values by +2 instead. So you can still use perplex standard if they target somebody else. So they're able to buff up another character potentially by +1s. So if they lose power cosmic, but Cersei gets outwit on her last click. When you have the pinata effect on first click, you're primarily looking at having stealth, which is sort of useful for Unimind as a power that he can pick. He already gets mind control up front, and the other element that's really good for him is shape change, because you really don't want to put an entity on Unimind, and you would give him sort of like this ghetto impervious. So that part actually is pretty useful. Makari is going to give Unimind access to hypersonic speed, Precision Strike, and Prob. And I really do think that like the Prob is interesting. And I think that's a sort of nice call, but you're mainly going to be using the hypersonic speed. And that's one element with Unimind that I feel like he needs to have like one or two dominoes on the field. That's my personal feeling and my personal opinion. But that's just how I look at it. There's too much that you're riding on the ID cards doing for you that you really can't afford for them to miss, and not convert points. So unfortunately, Makari's last click is trash for the situation because if Unimind is pop, support is worthless. You're not healing these guys back up. Okay, next is Icarus. Now, Icarus is okay, but I would not play Icarus for multiple reasons. Reason number one, you really don't need super strength because you can't combo it with like hypersonic speed or anything awesome. And you already have, if getting access to TK up front, I wouldn't prefer that for Unimind. I just don't think that that's a good call. You're spending way too many points on him. I'd rather have him, in all reality, summoning an ID card. The leadership isn't bad, but I don't think it triggers properly. Because I think that it's a free action to pick powers. So, yeah, hold up. Just let me check it here real quick. Whatever it takes, David. Yeah, at the beginning of, never mind. You could use the leadership. At the beginning of each turn, so this would happen during the beginning of turn phase, and when Unimind takes damage, you may choose a standard power a chosen character can use. Unimind can use that power until it chooses again. So, so you could pick leadership during some period and then have it carry over. So that would be the only thing that would be good for Icarus. But then the real problem, from my opinion, is what else are you going to be using to utilize that leadership? Again, you're running an army full of weenies to run Unimind. So are they doing stuff? Are you taking things off of them? Are you trying to take tokens off of them? Because you functionally can, because you're higher points than everything else on your team. Like, what are you really trying to do with that? So Icarus is really only good for leadership, which really isn't good at all. But when you start looking at that last click, it's like, that's hot garbage fire in your mouth. Like, that's horrible. You don't want any of those stats. So Icarus is really one I wouldn't recommend. I know some of you will say, but Dark Logos, check out that Impervious up top. I'm like, I got Invincible, homie. Like, Invincible is still better than Impervious. And like, even if I got Watcher's Eye or whatever else, that would be it wouldn't help me because I'm getting hit by freaking Nick Fury anyway. So I'm gonna, he's just gonna melt through it, like a hot knife through butter. So there's nothing good there. So let's go to Ajax. Now, Ajax has probability control and up front, which, if that's really all I needed, I'm better off looking at Makari. His last click is actually pretty good from a stats position, but realistically, like, I don't like it. Then you have Athena, which is nice because it gives you upfront running shot, and it also gives you a second chance at Invincible. So potentially, like, later down the dial, once you're on that Invo, you'd be like, ooh, I missed that sweet, sweet Invincible, baby. Like, I want it back. So there is benefits for picking her up as well. And definitely upfront running shot on clicks, 7 and 8, your first two clicks that you get, gives you that mobility, to like running shot, Psychic Blast, for example. So those are your sideline options. And so what you're probably seeing majority of times is people picking Athena people picking Makari, and then people picking Cersei. So those are your three, because we already established that Icarus sort of sucks and Ajax sort of sucks. Okay, and Cersei gives you a defensive option if you so choose up front from the shape change, and Makari gives you hypersonic speed or prob, and Athena gives you running shot or invincible. Though, like, just functionally overall, you're getting a lot more value from those three characters than the other characters. All right, so when all said and done, is Unimind going to be the savior of the meta that will make people, open themselves up a little bit and try something different? Yes, people will try something different because of Unimind. The inherent problem comes in is immediately as he is good, older ghost from the past comes back and says, "Did you forget about me, baby? Did you forget about me? I helped a little kid. I helped a young kid win Rocktober, baby. Did you forget about me?" And then out of the shadows comes a man in an owl suit named Nighthawk Prime. And he's, got the freaking swooping hand motions saying, "Baby, I'm fabulous. And I take away all of your stat modifications. Yeah, girl, you are unorganized and in disarray. I need to, use the powers of the pimp hand to take all that extra stat modification that you have. And I need to just, put it to good productive use. Like you not having it." So, yeah, and that's how it really feels. It feels like Nighthawk Prime comes out and, like, pimp slaps everybody. Because now all those points that you've invested in Unimind are functionally trash. Other than the fact that you can summon in a 165-point character. Which I could do on more stable characters and more durable characters. So why am I investing these points in Nighthawk Prime? And this is like a legit question. I mean, not Nighthawk Prime. Why am I investing these points in Unimind? And these are legit questions because a Jakeem team cannot play Nighthawk Prime and Jakeem. You have two primes. So you lose your prime advantage, okay, by picking Jakeem. And you can't have another, prime. And so what are you stuck with? Jakeem just says, all right, I have to play a lot more carefully, and I wait for the one shot, or I wait for, the TK Flurry Battle Fury. I wait for the running shot pulse wave with the stat mods on. Whatever it may be, Jakeem's waiting for that moment to, pulse wave force blast into the wall or whatever. Like, he's waiting for that moment to one shot or at least hurt and then follow up and kill Nighthawk Prime. Okay, he has an easier time of doing that than Unimind. Because you could say, well, couldn't Unimind just summon so-and-so and so-and-so? Yes. But then for you to get your stat mods back, you're going to have to be adjacent to Nighthawk Prime. And that's going to be your problem. Because your opponent will definitely punish you as you approach Nighthawk Prime. And if Nighthawk Prime is close, he's going to have his shape change, and he's probably only going to fail on a 1 in some cases. So what are you going to do then? You have to have Battle Fury. Now, how many teams are going to pack Battle Fury? Not a lot. How many teams are going to pack characters that are able to shut off, multiple powers or whatever else? Some. Peggy Carter is still valuable, but again, she eats up your prime slot. Okay? Now, I know some of you have been like, hey, Jakeem is not completely screwed. He has title character Deadpool, which is correct. Jakeem plus title character Deadpool is going to be an interesting force. The problem with Jakeem and title character Deadpool is I don't see, with all the stuff that's gone on recently, title character Deadpool being able to stay alive long enough to maintain that lock and making that lock good enough to shut down Unimind and just be like, look, hard stop on this right now. Okay. So when all is said and done, what are we looking at? Going into October or going into any other local tournament. On a local level, Unimind is going to show up unless you know that there's people with the Nighthawk Prime fetish where you play. He's going to get his tricks off. He's going to come in, run a shot. If you have the figures, he's going to come in and I'm going to make sure I pick my words properly when I say this. The below average player will barely understand the perplex on him. The medium player will start to understand the perplex and maybe realize that when you perplex, you're going to get 2 plus 2s, or 2 minus 2s, or a plus 1 and a minus 2. Okay? Also, a medium player is going to shift between an ID card call-in and just freaking Supermaning him. And they're going to quickly realize Supermaning him is the worst thing you could do. Consistently. Like making him the carry. Advanced players are, or let me say that, above average, between above average and advanced, you're going to see a mix between Superman Unimind and, Card Captor Sakura Unimind. Okay? Advanced players, you're going to see a very early mid-game positioning that leads into a mid-game, dealing out the Yu-Gi-Oh deck and summoning freaking enchanted monsters off of ID cards into a late-game Unimind killer with a intentional understanding of how each of the pop-offs are going to work in the late game. Okay? And I would even take it so far to say that advanced players are going to calculate that on average where they're going to be on their round table and what the role of all the pop-offs are going to do. Okay, now note, I am speaking about Unimind at 165 points. Nothing else. Okay, that's the only one that's relevant. I know someone says, but Dark Logos, you could play him at 300. No one's playing him at 300, baby. No one's playing him at 300, baby. Like, no. Just say no. Okay, as amusing as it sounds, you're still susceptible to so many different problems. Not just the out actioning, because that's easy. But in particular, just getting pulse waved. Just getting pulse waved is super easy. So anyway. Yeah, so I'm not going to promote Unimind at 300, but going back at that 165, I definitely feel that that's where you're going to see a majority of your magic, the majority of your problems, majority of your frustrations. And I know some of you might say, well, Dark Logos, well, what do I pair with my Unimind? What am I going to see with my Unimind? Blah, 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 blah. Just a round table and fill in stuff. Like, oh, I have another prop. Oh, I have maybe an outwit. Oh, look, I have a transporter or whatever the hell I want. Like, boom. The solutions are quick. Like, it's flexible. It's not Jakeem flexible, but it is Quinjet flexible. So I would tell you, go look at your old Quinjet builds and say, like, what can I do? Now, I know with some of the old Quinjet builds, there was some foul shenanigans. Let that part go. What other elements on there can you repeat now? Am I running 2 Colossal Retaliators? Am I running, like a Hyper Taxi? If so, what type of Hyper Taxi? And really there's only one hypertaxi that's actually good for Unimind, and that is Overdrive. I say about to merge the two. Overdrive with a charged up. I was about to call them overcharge. Yeah, because again, Unimind flies. Now you can also pack a Frognair and then have somebody carry Unimind. So that would work as well. I wouldn't recommend the Frognair, but I'm not against it. I think it just bloats his cost when you really don't need to. You can use those points in other ways that are more useful. He's definitely not a character that I would be like, yeah, I really want to haul him around that way. Now, in all fairness, if you figure out some pimp trick or whatever, then just go do it. I'm not one to stop you from doing, the trick that's going to win you Rocktober, because I said don't play Frognear. If you figure out how to use Frognear and, turn it into like a 3-turn succession shutdown or something, good for you, buddy. I don't know how you did it, but good for you. Now, I will say this also, just as sort of a side note. There are some other like weird elements that start jacking with Unimind. One of which I think is Casket of Ancient Winters. If played properly, starts messing with him. And there are a few other characters that can't have line of fire drawn to them if they're next to blank or in blank. So even summoning an ID card isn't that useful. But being able to like throw Unimind inside of a freaking Beta Ray build cloud and have him summon, whoever, is something that can work. So just sort of keep those things in mind of your options and what you want to see done with Unimind. So that's it for today's show. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. I'm going to sort of wrap this up real quickly because it's late on my end and I need to sort of like rush post-production. So thank you for listening, and remember, we all have to start over sometime.